Number 10. Children of the Vault. The Children of the Vault are their own race who seek to rule the world. They are neither mutants nor humans, though they did evolve from the human race. The children are part of a race that descended from humans, having been technologically evolved over the course of 6,000 years. They believe only one race should rule Earth and plan on becoming said race. One of their members, Seraphina, recently resurfaced in the Dawn of X-Men series, having escaped from Orchis, who had somehow captured her. Before Wolverine could catch her though, she returned to the Vault, where she was also seen rejoining the other children. Number 9. Phalanx. So the Phalanx are kind of complex. If you are familiar with the Phalanx, it's probably because you are familiar with the Annihilation Conquest story arc from 2007 to 2008. The Phalanx work basically to destroy matter and upload it to a hive mind of data using the techno-organic virus, assimilating all organic and inorganic matter that they come across in the universe. So they're basically like the Technarchy, but the Phalanx share a collective mind, where the Technarchy are individuals. Phalanx aim to absorb all matter in the universe and eventually manage to threaten all of Earth and mutant kind respectively. It is only through Moira's regeneration abilities that we know the great risk this hive mind tech race could pose, and has posed to the X-Men and all of life before, in a previous one of Moira's lives. Number 8. The Supremacy. The Supremacy sought to take down and defeat the X-Men in an alternate future. We learned a bit more about them in Powers of X. They were the ones behind Nimrod the Lesser and eventually Nimrod the Greater, and their library of Homo sapiens and mutants alike. After years of breeding mutants in camps to use as their slaves and hounds to fight against their own kind who had revolted, they went a step further, literally dissolving mutants in tanks of femto fluid until they were reduced to nothing but the data that comprised them. Ugh. They would then be stored in a great library where the data that their corpses provided could be used to win the war against mutant kind. Eventually, the war became obsolete, however, making this whole process and the library that stored this data almost eerily useless, which is creepier. Don't put me in femto fluid, please. Number 7. Orchis. Orchis is a combination of a variety of government organizations, some more noble than others. The money and structure behind Orchis has been provided by such iconic organizations as AIM, SHIELD, and Strike primarily, with smaller investments belonging to organizations such as SWORD, Alpha Flight, Hammer, Armor, and even Hydra. The goal of Orchis is to protect humanity from growing global threats, which in this case involve mutants. Their plotting caused Professor X to create a task force to stop the creation of a mother mold, which he and Moira McTaggart believed would be the beginning of the end for mutants in regards to the Nimrod tech that the mother mold would produce. However, we later discovered in the new X-Men series that the work of scientist Alia Gregor, who is affiliated with Orchis, proves that this assumption may have actually been wrong, and that Nimrod tech may continue to be a threat to the X-Men even with the mother mold destroyed. Also, now Alia's got an even bigger hate on for the mutants and the X-Men after the death of her husband, which happened when the mutant team infiltrated the Orchis space station and destroyed the mother mold. Number 6. Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao is a very wealthy politician. He was publicly humiliated by Kate Pride. Yeah, she's dropped Kitty and she's just going by Kate Pride now. And Bishop. She was humiliated when she attempted to blame mutants for her missing husband, who turned out had actually just joined a kind of cult of worshipping and celebrating mutants. So that's kind of awkward for her. Frustrated, she decided to make a very generous donation to anti-mutant organizations and aims to continue her own fight in the war against mutants. She donated to one very specific anti-mutant organization actually, which we'll talk about soon. Number 5. Xeno. Although the creation and unity we have seen from the mutants in the Dawn of X relaunch has allowed them to shut down those programs who would use mutants as test subjects and as a means to advance human evolution, that doesn't mean that the people behind those organizations just disappear. In fact, it seems that instead the few people left who still believe in them have found one another and created a more secretive organization in the shadows known as Xeno. Xeno was the group behind the assassination of Charles Xavier in the X-Force series, and while X was successfully resurrected, Xeno still created quite a shiver of panic among the mutants of Krakoa. This organization will likely continue to pop up as an enemy to mutants and the X-Men throughout the relaunch, and they are ruthless, resourceful, and terrifying in their methods, successfully using the captured Domino's skin to ensure their assassinations team success. Ick. Graphic. Get it? Because they graphed her skin? Ew. Gotta get that luck though, gotta just slap that luck skin onto ya. Number 4. Apoth. Apoth is the main antagonist of the New Fallen Angel series. While Apoth doesn't directly threaten all of mutant kind or all of X-Men, although at the end they kind of mentioned it like they would be threatening that, they definitely found a strong enemy with one member of the X-Men, Psylocke. Or well, a version of Psylocke anyways. With Braddock and Quanon both being discarded as names for her, Psylocke sets out to seek out her daughter, who had been taken from her years ago when she worked for the Hand. Yeah, apparently she has a secret daughter, that's a thing. And to find a villain called Apoth. Also, I think we can assume because of the whole Hand thing that this Psylocke is Quanon, but she doesn't want us to call her Quanon, so we won't do that. It turns out that Apoth is a god who also kind of has an army of children at their disposal, and that they inhabit two sides of themselves, one light, one dark. Psylocke creates a team and works with Sinister to find and defeat Apoth for her own reasons, not knowing that in fact strings have also kind of been pulled in regards to this upcoming battle and why she's going to do it. Apoth is a powerful and psychic telepathic villain, but still proves to be no match for Psylocke. Number 3. Horticulture. I love these ladies so much. They are basically a villainous eco-terrorist version of the Golden Girls group. They are sassy, elderly women who used to work for corrupt and greedy biotech companies who did not care about the effects of their work in regards to the planet's well-being. As such, these women decided to fight back. They planted their own seeds within the companies, hoping to infiltrate them over time so that they could then have control of all plant life on Earth, deciding what grows and what doesn't. However, with Krakoa's miracle plants and resulting pharma drugs hitting the market as a result of the mutant nation being recognized globally, their plans were kind of threatened. Horticulture formed, and these 4 women, Opal, Lily, Augusta, and Edith, threatened the mutants and Krakoa. They attacked with a green sticky substance that appears to neutralize mutant powers, and vowed to either cause Krakoa to join them or they would cut them down like the weed they are. I sincerely hope we get to see a lot more of them, or that the mutants decide to team up with them because they're just hilarious and amazing. Number 2. Merc. Merc is a team and organization that was built out of the demilitarization that seems to have happened globally as a result of Krakoa being recognized as a nation. Call it a time of peace or call it an anxious time of reserved resources in preparation for the war to come, but regardless of the cause, Merc is comprised of former top paramilitary soldiers who seek out battle because, you know, they were kinda laid off, and as such have become guns for hire. They are loyal to no nation. They were originally employed by Zeno to fight against the X-Force and X-Men, but may have also more recently been approached by the mutants themselves in regards to their services. So we'll have to wait and see. They were fighting against them, but maybe they can be used. Number 1. Hominis Verendi. While the Marauders might operate separately from the X-Men, they are still comprised of a lot of former and current X-Men members, including one of the original team members, Bobby Drake, and it also includes Storm! Yay! This team is led by Captain Kate and ends up going up against the anti-mutant organization Hominis Verendi, which is comprised of former Inner Circle members of the Hellfire Club. Sort of. Also, can we just acknowledge how great the Hellfire Trading Company is though? Separate of course from Hominis Verendi, but still, they're really cool and I just had to shout them out because yeah, they're really fun. Hominis Verendi were previously known as the unofficial Hellfire Brats and were originally part of the Hellfire Academy. The team also has their own White Queen, Black King, and the like, similar to Krakoa's Quiet Council and the former Hellfire Club. But of course, they're all kids, they're all little, non-mutant kids who just want to hate on mutants. Evil children, evil children.
Coming in number 10, Deadpool. Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe. What a ride. This issue was released August 2012, and just the front cover is bloody goodness. What happened here was the X-Men put Wade into the Ravencroft Asylum in attempts to heal his insanity. The doctor just happened to be Psycho Man, of course, so he brainwashed Wade with plans to shut down all of his inner voices, which worked, but now these voices were replaced with voices that were encouraging him to, well, kill everybody in the Marvel Universe. Reed then gets left all rubbery and lifeless, and it's pretty dark overall. As far as X-Men villains go, this version of Wade was made a tad more intimidating than X-Men Origins Wolverine, just a tad. Coming number 9, Storm. Aurora Monroe made her debut in Giant Size X-Men issue number 1. She's one of the more popular members of the X-Men, being portrayed by Halle Berry and Alexander Shipp. She was recruited by Charles and joined the team to save other original students from Krakoa. She was appointed leader after several years of work. In X-Men Apocalypse, we see her recruited as a horseman, but by the end of the movie she betrays him and joins the X-Men. But as far as powerful X-Men villains, I can't not look for a reason to include Storm. She's Omega, and when she's on the wrong side of the fight, it can get messy. Coming number 8, Wolverine. Wolverine has a rough past, so it's no surprise that he's gone down a few dark paths as well. In the movie Logan, for example, we see two Wolverines battle it out, and it's stressful, it's gory, and it's very upsetting to most. But I mean, that's Wolverines going at it, so it sounds about right. In the Age of Apocalypse storyline, Logan goes from being an X-Men to the Horseman of Death. Yeah, Apocalypse actually had Wolverine go against Sabretooth in order to see who would become the new Horseman. Wolverine came out on top, and Apocalypse restored the adamantium to his skeleton. Quite the deal if you ask me. To make matters worse, Apocalypse replaced Wolverine with a Skrull so the X-Men wouldn't even notice. So there's a few comics here that could blend nicely into the MCU, like Apocalypse replacing Wolverine with a Skrull. That is totally possible. With Ryan Reynolds confirming the next Deadpool would have included Logan, I doubt there isn't some sort of that coming with him for Deadpool 3. They're basically best friends in real life. Adam Sandler has like 14 of his friends every movie, so I'm holding out hope for Logan. Coming in number 7, Juggernaut. K. Marco made his first comic book appearance in X-Men issue 12. When Kane and Charles Xavier were serving together in the same unit, but when Kane was under fire, he ran off to take cover in a nearby cave. The cave was actually home to the lost temple of Sidorak, so Kane grabbed this glowing ruby from the lap of an idol, read the inscription, and possessed the power of the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, becoming a literal human Juggernaut. After he dug himself out, he destroyed an entire village, with the previous man who held the Juggernaut mantle, Jin Taiko, getting taken out as well. We've literally seen him rip Deadpool in half, and if he's coming over to the MCU, I hope Juggernaut will as well. Coming in number 6, Strife. Making his debut in New Mutants issue number 87, Strife was the clone of Nathan Summers, the son of Cyclops, and Madeline Pryor. He's a clone of Cable from the future. He has this high-tech armor, he's a telepathic and telekinetic mutant, and unlike Cable, who has to devote his psionic powers to ensure this techno-organic virus doesn't get his right side as well, Strife doesn't need to worry about that issue. Apocalypse wanted this child, he wanted to raise the clone himself, so down the road he could one day claim the body as his own. Coming number 5, Shadow King. Making his first appearance in X-Men 117, the Shadow King is a multiversal manifestation of the dark side of the human consciousness, spawned by the first Nightmare. Amal Farouk was the leader of the underground syndicate located in the Thieves' Quarter of Cairo, Egypt. He's a powerful mutant who also happened to be a vessel for said Shadow King. Farouk was able to control everybody around him, and it's pretty terrifying when you think about it. He feeds on the shadows of your soul, so yeah, with Marvel now veering off to the cosmic side of things, we could see a Shadow King whenever the X-Men come into the picture. In the comics before World War II, Amal Farouk worked with Baron von Strucker to try and destabilize Britain's political structure. Even more terrifying. Coming in number 4, Mr. Sinister. Dr. Nathaniel Essex made his first debut in Uncanny X-Men 221. He's not that easy to forget though once you take a look at him. He's kind of terrifying, well, to say the least. He's obsessed with experimenting on mutants, and yes, that includes himself. He was obsessed with Darwin's theory of evolution, but felt like they were shackled by too many moral constraints. He couldn't even get funding from the Hellfire Club, so he had to get together a group that he named the Marauders, and got them to kidnap people off of the streets of London so that he could continue his experiments. Guy is pretty twisted when you think about it. He even tried to experiment on his own son, who just happened to be no longer alive. A villain who resurrects the dead? I mean, the MCU could probably use that right about now. Coming number 3, Mojo. Making his first debut in Longshot issue number 3, Mojo is known for using Earth as forms of TV entertainment for the universe. We're getting close to these cosmic vibes with Loki's show on Disney+, so I don't think a live-action Mojo is far-fetched. The more viewers he gets for his interdimensional TV show, the more powerful that he becomes. So in 1992, the issue titled Mojo's Media Madness had this wild storyline where Mojo gets Rogue, Cyclops, Beast, and Wolverine to think that they are characters from The Wizard of Oz. I would sell my soul to see this show. I mean, but for now, the comic will have to do. This takes place in X-Men issue number 10. Mojo is a unique villain. He's part of a race of spineless beings from a planet named after him called Mojo World, inside a pocket dimension called the Mojoverse. So this race of spineless beings were slowly going crazy over time because TV signals from another space-time continuum were scattered into their timelines. He's a powerful sorcerer, and we're not exactly sure just how far his magic can go, and I don't really want to find out, to be honest. Coming number 2, Onslaught. Making his first debut in X-Men issue number 15, Onslaught was a sentient psionic entity created from the minds of Charles Xavier and Magneto. That's pretty messed up. So when the X-Men were fighting the Acolytes, Wolverine hit Magneto, and then in return, Magneto ripped the adamantium from his bones, which, gotta say, I thought hangnails were bad. This sounds like an absolute nightmare. His healing factor had to work overtime for sure. Xavier shut down Magneto's mind, which made him catatonic, but during this moment all of Magneto's lust for hate and violence leaked into Charles' consciousness, creating this new personality called Onslaught. He now obtained the ability to tap into the psychic resources of the astral plane, where he could then manipulate matter and energy. There's also a red Onslaught, but I'll save that for another time. Last but certainly not least, our number one spot, Apocalypse. Esteban Noor, making his first steps in Marvel graphic novel issue number 17, was born nearly 5,000 years ago at the edge of the Valley of the Kings in ancient Egypt. He was abandoned by his tribe because of the fact that he looked, well, different. He had the Avatar look going on, for lack of a better explanation. He later was raised by the nomads with the idea that only the strong survive, a tough way for a child to think and live. He actually was killed by agents of Ozymandias, but was later revived thanks to his mutant abilities. For example, his self-molecular manipulation allows for him to alter his physical form, and he's also a genius. Even before being modified by the celestial ship, Apocalypse was already living for thousands of years. All he has to do is enter a deep sleep. In the X-Men Apocalypse storyline, we see just how big and bad the guy can get though.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Wolverine. Wolverine has had a pretty crazy past, so it's no surprise he's gone down a few dark roads. In the movie Logan, we see two Wolverines battling it out, and it's glorious and it's gory. It's so gory. In Age of Apocalypse, Logan goes from being an X-Men to the Horsemen of Death. It's a great comic. Yeah, Apocalypse actually had Wolverine square up against Sabretooth in order to see who becomes the new Horseman. Wolverine, of course, came out on top, and Apocalypse restored the adamantium to his skeleton. Quite the deal if you ask me. And to make matters worse, Apocalypse replaced Wolverine with a scroll so the X-Men wouldn't notice. So there's a few comics here that could blend nicely into the MCU, like Apocalypse replacing Wolverine with a scroll. This is totally possible, with Ryan Reynolds confirming that the next Deadpool would have included Logan on this road trip. That plus the fact that they're best friends in real life. I mean, Adam Sandler has like 15 of his friends in every movie, so I'm sure they're planning to bring Logan in with Deadpool in that deal in some way, shape, or form. Would it be Apocalypse making him evil? Probably not, but never say never. And before we continue on with this list, guys, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be so helpful. It helps our channel out quite a bit. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. Tap that thumbs up. Let's keep this video going. Number 9, Pyro. Pyro was once a student at the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. And in X-Men 2, we see him hanging out with Iceman and Rogue. He's having a great time just hanging out with some super students. But by the end of the movie, he switches over to Magneto's side, facing off against Bobby. In the comics, St. John Allardyce made his first appearance as Pyro in X-Men 141. He was born and raised in Australia, and his powers, well, as you could probably guess, has something to do with fire. When he was young, he met Mystique, and then he ended up joining her new brotherhood of evil mutants. We need more fire bad guys, plain and simple. We have none in the MCU. I mean, we had some kind of with Spider-Man Far From Home, but that was all just Mysterio being Mysterio. Number 8, Shadow King. Making his first appearance in X-Men 117, the Shadow King is a multiversal manifestation of the dark side of the human consciousness. Spawned, of course, by the first Nightmare. Amal Farouk was the leader of an underground syndicate located in the Thieves' Quarter of Cairo, Egypt. He's a powerful mutant who also happened to be a vessel for said Shadow King. Farouk was able to control everybody around him, and it's pretty terrifying. He feeds on the shadows of your soul. So yeah, with Marvel now veering off to the cosmic side of things, I think we can get a Shadow King behind the scenes secretly just sucking the life out of our world's finest. In the comics before World War II, Amal Farouk worked with Baron von Strucker to try and destabilize Britain's political structure. So maybe this guy has been here the whole time and he's just been lurking in the shadows. We just don't know it yet. I mean, he is the Shadow King. We're not going to really see him. He's here right now. He's been here the whole time. Number 7, Juggernaut. Cain Marko made his first comic book appearance in X-Men issue 12. Cain and Charles Xavier were serving together in the same unit, but when Cain was under fire, he ran off to take cover in a nearby cave. That cave was actually home to the lost temple of Sidorak. So Cain grabbed this glowing ruby from the lap of an idol, read the inscription, and possessed the power of the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, becoming a human Juggernaut. And then an explosion went off and Cain the Juggernaut was trapped under the rubble and Xavier took off. He got out of there. So after Cain dug himself out, he destroyed an entire village with the previous man who had held the Juggernaut mantle Jin Taiko getting taken out as well. I mean, we've literally seen him rip Deadpool in half, and if Deadpool's coming to the MCU, I really hope Juggernaut will as well. After all, last time we saw him in Deadpool 2 at the end of the movie, he was crawling out of that pool. He wasn't actually dead. He was just a little bit injured after Colossus laid him out with the help of some well-placed wires. Number 6, Strife. Making his debut in New Mutants issue 87, Strife was the clone of Nathan Summers, the son of Cyclops and Madeline Pryor, Cable. So we just saw Cable as a new main character slash villain in Deadpool 2, and he was played by Josh Brolin. So I don't think he'll be coming to the MCU. Or at least if he does, they may have to do it with this way, with Strife. That way they can bend the original story and use alternate futures however they please, with the character more or less staying true to the comics. He's a clone of Cable from the future. He has this bad armor, he's a telepathic and telekinetic mutant, and Cable, who has devoted his psionic powers to basically ensure that this techno-organic virus doesn't get his right side as well, Strife doesn't need to worry about that, so he's OP. He's an OG who is OP. The MCU could for sure use Strife. The timelines are getting quite intricate, so it can be explainable, and we'll buy it. If Strife comes in, we'll definitely buy it. Number 5, Mr. Sinister. Dr. Nathaniel Essex made his first comic book debut in Uncanny X-Men 221. And he's not that easy to forget once you take one look at him. So in a world where Sword was taking out Vision and Hydra's doing tests to make mutants in their secret labs, I totally think Mr. Sinister could show up with the X-Men in the MCU. After all, he's obsessed with experimenting on mutants, including himself. He was obsessed with Darwin's theory of evolution, but he felt like they were shackled by too many moral constraints. So that doesn't say anything. You're like, okay, this guy's messed. He couldn't get the funding from the Hellfire Club or, Kickstarter wasn't around. So he got together a group that he named Marauders, and then he got them to kidnap people off the streets of London so he can experiment on them himself. He even tried to experiment on his son, who wasn't even alive. So yeah, he's a villain who likes to bring the dead back. So hey, we could always use one of those for sure. Number 4, Dark Phoenix. Jean Grey is an Omega level mutant born with telekinetic and telepathic powers. Seeing the potential in Jean's strength, the Phoenix Force attached itself to her while she was in danger during a space mission with the Fantastic Four. I mean, come on guys, it's X-Men 101. Literally, the issue you can find this in is X-Men 101. I am Phoenix. Boom. Okay, so this dark, powerful cosmic force started to change her for the worse. She ended up destroying a solar system that killed like billions of people. We just finished watching Wanda have the breakdown of a century every Friday for weeks, so we'll gladly watch Jean Grey deal with the Phoenix Force in a similar fashion. Totally. Now, with the fact that Jean Grey wasn't the one to do these evil acts and she was being used as a vessel, rings a bit too close to Wanda's story, but never say never. Number 3, Apocalypse. Making his first steps in Marvel graphic novel issue 17, it's undeniable how intimidating this Omega level mutant is. This guy is loaded with powers. He can suck the energy from you. Apocalypse can suck the energy out of anything and then use that power to shoot energy blasts or use that power to enhance his own strength and speed. Okay, not a bad start. We could definitely use someone like that in the MCU. And just by looking at Apocalypse, you can see that he's merged with celestial technology. His armor is futuristic, it's fun. This technology is wired throughout his body and also his headquarters, making Apocalypse able to teleport at times. Self-molecular manipulation allows for him to alter his physical form. He can get big, he can get small, whatever the case. He's also a super genius, especially when it comes to advanced technology, that stuff that I mentioned earlier. Even before being modified by the celestial ship, Apocalypse was already living for thousands of years. He just goes into a coma and then heals up. I mean, talk about a beauty sleep, damn. In X-Men Age of Apocalypse from 1995, we see just how big and bad this guy can get. Oscar Isaac had a take on him in X-Men Apocalypse and it was great, that was super fun. Not as scary or big as the comics, but still a good time. So if Marvel needs a new big bad guy besides Kang, I think they should go here next. We love superhero teams fighting big bald guys. I mean, we can't get enough of it. Evidently, we'll pay to see it numerous times. Number 2, Scarlet Witch. No more mutants. Scarlet Witch, aka Wanda Maximoff, she's the daughter of Magneto and the twin brother of Quicksilver, aka Ralph Boner, aka Pietro Maximoff. Now, she was on her father's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but at one point she did join the Avengers as well, of course. She's one of Marvel's biggest heroes and she's trending every single Friday for a reason. And then in Marvel's M Day, she kind of became the ultimate evil when she spoke those 3 words, and just like that, a mass amount of mutants were depowered or killed. That large number being 986,618, give or take. Only leaving a couple hundred left on the planet. WandaVision was great because we finally got to see this Scarlet Witch. We saw this villain side to her. And I'd be happy to see more at any time, especially with more mutants now on the way. And number 1, Magneto. Of course, number 1, this is the most ideal scenario. I'd love for this to happen. He made his first appearance in X-Men 1 back in 1963. Magneto is a mutant with the ability to generate and control magnetic fields. He's a master of magnetism. He was a close friend with Professor X, but of course they came to a few disagreements over the idea that humans and mutants could coexist peacefully. And his horrible childhood makes a pretty fair point for said argument. He created the Brotherhood of Mutants and the Acolytes, and he worked with the X-Men before. When Professor X needed to leave Earth, Magneto stepped in to take his place and continued to teach his students how to use their powers. After this, he became a hero in a way, guiding the New Mutants, but again, he's one of those guys that constantly flips back and forth in the comics. And for a while, fans, including myself, were hoping that Magneto was going to be the one behind WandaVision's madness somehow, or he would come in from another universe and then explain to Wanda what's going on and be the bearer of bad news almost. I think Magneto should still be one of the first mutants introduced, especially if they go Ultimate Magneto, because he actually takes out Xavier in those comics, and also thousands of people as well. So there's that. He would be a cool villain to come over, definitely.
And at number 10, Barnacle. Barnacle was a character who first was introduced in 1999 in X-Men Magneto War Issue 1. He's a mutant terrorist who has one of the nastiest powers, moisture solidification. He can initiate a chemical reaction that turns moisture into a solid shell, which he uses for various things. It can contain a person in a constructive turtle-like shell with their own bodily fluids. Ew. He can create indestructible armor for himself, and he can spray a stream of hardened barnacle crust through the air. Also ew, because it most likely comes from the moisture in his own body. Super gross. He once tried to screw with Storm and her claustrophobia by encasing her in a hardened shell, but luckily Nightcrawler was there to intervene. Dude is just flat out nasty. And at number 9, Deadbolt. Deadbolt is another smaller villain to make our list, and aesthetically is a very different kind of scary in comparison to our last number. Deadbolt is a living skeleton, contained with an energy field, who could remove pieces of his bones to use as a weapon. His body would immediately regenerate if he did, meaning I guess he's got an arsenal of bone weapons for eternity. He was a member of the Dark Riders, an organization that worked for X-Men Big Bad Genesis. He was initially seemingly killed off by Wolverine, but later it was revealed that one of his fellow Dark Riders was the culprit behind his death. His skull is also split in half, creating devilish-like horns atop of his head. And he's definitely not the kind of villain I'd want to run into in the middle of the night, that's for damn sure. And at 8, Peeper. Peeper, aka Peter Quinn, is one of the weirder villains on our list. He was recruited by Magneto to be a member of the new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but was abandoned with his new teammates when failing their first mission together, and getting defeated by Captain America. From there, he and his band of rejects became the Mutant Force and worked for Mandrill, which also got them arrested. Then, after that, Red Skull became their new sponsor. Years later, he would die at the side of a road, being devoured by Predator X while screaming. So if anything, based on all of that, Peepers doesn't actually seem all that scary now, does he? But in terms of his appearance, those large, eerie eyeballs of his are super unsettling. They give him various optical powers, including telescopic vision, microscopic vision, X-ray vision, and optic blasts. I do not want to know what he uses the X-ray vision for. No. And at 7, Onslaught. First appearing in X-Men Volume 2, Issue 53 in 1996, Onslaught is a sentient psionic entity created from the consciousness of two of the most powerful mutants, Charles Xavier and Magneto. During a prior battle, Xavier would become catatonic when using his abilities to shut down Magneto's mind. He was prompted by Magneto ripping the adamantium from Wolverine's skeleton. Yeah, I could imagine why that would piss him off. This caused the darkest parts of Magneto's mind to enter into Xavier's consciousness, merging with the hero's own darkest tendencies, everything that he had repressed for the last 30 years, which eventually grew into an individual persona, otherwise known as Onslaught. After he was defeated the first time, his consciousness lingered, and he would later return the Onslaught Reborn storyline, the brand new but equally scary form. And at 6, Zorn. Zorn is a bit of a confusing character thanks to a series of retcons surrounding him. He worked as a teacher for the Xavier School of Gifted Youngsters, but then it was revealed that he was actually Magneto all along. At this point in time, the metal manipulator was dead. But then it was retconned yet again, revealing that Zorn was just a Magneto imposter and not actually Magneto himself. Lisai. Anywho, the reason why he gets a spot on our list is thanks to his dandy little helmet. It's a skull-like helmet, which is scary on its own, but it's meant to contain massive amounts of energy coming off of Zorn's head. He has a star for a brain. I mean, man, like if I saw someone who had a star for a brain, no bueno, avoiding that dude. And at number 5, Dark Beast. Dark Beast is an evil alternate version of Hank McCoy from Earth 295, the Age of Apocalypse reality. Because of Charles Xavier's absence, this version of Hank disregarded all sense of ethics, becoming a mad scientist who worked under Apocalypse. He would conduct cruel and unusual experiments in Apocalypse's name, and even managed to escape that reality before it imploded, showing up on Earth 616 and becoming quite the threat to the X-Men and Hank, and the 616 Hank while he was present. He's 20 years older than the 616 Beast and therefore isn't as physically strong as his counterpart, but still gives him a run for his money. Plus he's villainous, so you know, putting all that brain power to evil uses is not a good thing. Moving on to number 4, Mojo. Mojo is one creepy fella. First appearing in Longshot issue 3 in 1985, Mojo is an absurdist parody of network executives. He's part of an alien race known as the Spineless Ones, and is the dictator and a slaver of a dimension he rules called the Mojoverse, where all of the dimension's inhabitants are obsessed and addicted with Mojo's gladiator television programs. When he was created by Ann Noceti and Art Adams, Noceti specifically requested that Adams make Mojo as disgusting and unpleasant as possible. He's got wires that hold open his eyelids, inspired by A Clockwork Orange. And because of his large size, he rides around on a multi-legged flying platform that's armed with a bunch of deadly weapons and particle beams. In addition to his mastery of manipulation and several of his powers being derived from magic, Mojo is also able to generate an anti-life force field that makes him capable of killing things simply by touching them. He can wither plants and age humans. In at 3, Apocalypse. Apocalypse is one of the X-Men's most fearsome foes. He's an ancient evil, the first mutant, who is practically immortal and sees himself as the father of mutant kind. He operates under very Darwinian principles, believing in the survival of the fittest, killing off the weak in order to make the survivors grow stronger, for the betterment of humanity. He considers himself the apocalypse of the modern man and the father of what humanity will become, mutant kind. He fully believes that what he is doing is the right thing. He's ensuring evolution. Minus how terrifying his ideologies are, his abilities are, intense too. The ones at his disposal are tremendous. He has self-molecular control, a genius-level intellect, he can manipulate matter and energy, he can shapeshift, is capable of accessing astral planes, is telekinetic, telepathic, is a technopath. He can augment the powers of other mutants and transfer someone's consciousness into another being. In all of his appearances over the years, Apocalypse has always been one of the most physically intimidating villains in Marvel's comics, and considering what he's capable of, it's definitely not hard to find the character downright horrifying. And at number 2, Emplate. Emplate may not be as well known of a villain as our previous number, but he's arguably physically more frightening. Emplate is a mutant who physically looks like an emaciated corpse with purple artery-like veins running across his gray flesh. He is not a looker, that's for damn sure. Emplate first came to be in Generation X issue 1 back in 1994, and when his mutant powers first manifested, he was overcome with hunger and killed his mom because of it, causing his father to kick him out. Emplate, who back then was known as Marius St. Croix, sought out the dark arts out of a desire for more power. He would later be rejected by his sister as well, who he would magically trap inside of the form of a mute creature with razor-sharp diamond-hard skin, Penance. While he's only fought the X-Men a handful of times, his powers are not to be taken lightly. He has the ability to siphon mutant energy from bone marrow of mutants. If he siphons all of their energy, they die. While he's feeding from them, he cancels out their powers and often takes on some of his victims' attributes. If he feeds on them multiple times, he gains their powers permanently. So he's basically a mutant vampire. In addition to this, when he feeds, he achieves a measure of psychic control over his victims' minds, making them his subordinates. Scratch that, he is the mutant Dracula. And finally, in at number 1, the Shadow King. The Shadow King is one of Charles Xavier's consistent foes. He was a human mutant from Egypt with vast telepathic powers, which he used for evil, eventually taking on the alias of the Shadow King. Through retconning, he was made into an ancient evil entity. Aside from his bone-chilling appearance, this character scores the top spot on our list thanks to his possession abilities. While in the astral plane, he can possess other beings and control them. So he's basically like a monster out of a horror movie. He's an astral entity who preys on the bodies of highly skilled and powerful psychics, which he then uses to enslave others with. In the Shadow King's native form, he cannot be harmed physically, and he has lived for over a millennia. Generally, the Shadow King is depicted as a large creature with purplish skin, glowing red eyes, sharp claws, and even sharper teeth. Luckily, in order to exist in reality, the Shadow King needs a host, and if that host is killed, it will disperse the Shadow King's astral essence, which can take up to months or years for him to re-manifest in his astral form again. Thank God.